I'm Bonnie. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today we're going to talk about the nines in tarot. So we're going to give you a brief overview of what the 9 number means in general. We're also going to talk a little bit about the significance of the 9 for us as a collective because we're in a 9 year. And then we're going to go through each suit individually and talk about what each card means and how we can actually use that card in everyday life. So some practices that Peter and I will share with how, some fun things to do with the energy of that card. So the number 9 in general brings us to a state of completion. So if we think about the 9 in numerology is really the end of the journey. And in tarot, you're nearing the end of the journey. And there is a lot of completion energy amongst the cards of the 9. But if we think about that, like we've gone through this whole journey, now we're at the 9. So we reflect back on, the journey, lessons that we've learned during that journey and things that now we're ready to let go of. Because, we've probably learned a lot along the way. So this is a really great opportunity with a 9 to let go of some things that aren't serving us anymore or to embrace those things that we've gained throughout our journey. 9s also signify like personal fulfillment and satisfaction, again, based on that journey that we've been on, integrating those lessons, and also like this increased awareness and self-understanding. So the 9 is really reflective as well. So allowing us to go in and reflect with ourselves. So it's another one of those funny numbers in the tarot. Some of the cards are great. Some of them are a little bit more difficult. And we'll get into that as we go through the suits. But the 9 is a pretty powerful number, as they all are. Yeah. I mean, the 9 isn't special in that way, but a lot of interesting things come with the 9. So, Peter, what do you think about the 9 in general? And then us maybe being in, if you want to give us a quick little overview of what it's like to be in a 9 year.
In a 9 year, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because you said power, right? And I think I can't remember who it was who used the term peak power. It might have been Mary Greer, it might be Liz Worth, but I read that somewhere that the 9s represent the peak power of the suit. And so for me as a musician, the analogy I always think of is an amplifier, right? So I actually think of this analogy at the end of the suits for the 9s and the 10s. So when I think of the 9 is like taking your amplifier and turning it to 10, which is kind of an interesting analogy because the 10 is like taking the amp and turning it to 11. So anybody who's seen Spinal Tap, when you take, right, you take your amplifier and turn it well beyond its capacity. That to me is a great analogy for what the 10s are. So it kind of lends itself with a really solid understanding of the 9s being, that maximum energy, that peak power, the intensity of the suit itself. And, just to think about, the 9 of Wands being that intense fire, the 9 of Cups being the intensity of emotion, that idea of the joie de vivre, the 9 of Swords, you can't really be in your head any more than the 9 of Swords. Like, so the idea of 9s being, being that sense of intensity, of maximum intensity. So that's and then ditto to all the other things that you said as well. Interesting about the idea of 9s being reflective, but of course, you're looking back and seeing all the other 8 steps that you've taken, and 9 really being the last single digit in our Western number society. Beyond 9, it's 2-digit and 3-digit and 4-digit numbers. So really 9 is the time where, it's kind of the end of the journey and you turn around and look back, which brings, you mentioned that we're in a 9 years. So for people who don't know why that is, numerologically, if we break down the year that we're in now, we are in the year 2025 as we record this, and we add up the digits. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, we get 9, which makes this a hermit year, or makes it a 9 year. So when we think about the energy of the hermit as well, it's a couple of things, right? It's internal facing,
Mhm.
and it's a, I'll say it's a choice of solitude and reflection. I always kind of think of the hermit as what it is, but I also think about the hermit as what it's not as well. I think about the first 9 cards in the major arcana and the reflection between the hermit and the hierophant. And I think, both can be teachers, can be bringers of knowledge, whereas the hierophant is somebody who brings knowledge out to other people. The hermit is somebody who seeks inner knowledge. So wisdom would be kind of that key word that I link to that. So when we think about being in a 9 year, we're in a year where we may be kind of turning into ourselves. We might be looking for opportunities to seek out wisdom, to seek out self-understanding, and to sometimes as well look at valuing time alone, valuing our own our own solitude as opposed to loneliness, which has a almost a negative connotation. Solitude is something that we sometimes do to be able to move forward in different capacities. So I don't know. That's it. Any thoughts for you? This being a 9 year, being a year of the hermit.
Yeah, like I do feel I was in a personal 9 year a couple of years ago. So that was a lot of letting go and yeah, and a
Mhm.
lot of solitude as well. But again, not in a bad way. And I think because nines too are about reflecting on the past, like this is a good year to really look at the past 9 years, see,
Mm.
the journey that you've been on, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what you're ready to say no to, and then what you're ready to bring into your life. Because with the 9, as we complete something, then on the other end of that, we're ready to let in new beginnings. But we can't allow those new beginnings to come in if we're still sort of holding on to these things. So I think in order to reflect on those past 9 years, we do need time alone. We need time for self-reflection. So it's a really beautiful uh, energy to be in, but you can't do that when your mind is like preoccupied with all the stuff that's going on the outside. So really taking that time to go inward, reflect on those past 9 years, and see what you're ready to let go of and what you're ready to bring into your, because then next year we're going to start a new 9 year cycle, right? So
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about that idea of the 9, that because when I think of the hermit card, I think, most hermit cards, not all, but many hermit cards show the hermit at the peak of a mountain. So they're at a precipice. And I think about, well, imagine your view, imagine what you can take in when
mhm,
you're up there. So when you think about that, it would be hard to focus with that kind of expanse in front of you, and yet think about the light source that the hermit has. What they can see is limited by the flame or the light of the lantern that they're carrying, or in some cases it's a torch, or whatever it happens to be. So their light source is limited. What they kind of focus on is limited, yet the environment is vast. So it really does, that imagery really does kind of call us to narrow our focus, to kind of stay within our beam of light.
mhm,
I love the hermit card. I'm the same. I had a personal hermit year a few years ago, and you really do get that sense. It's almost a longing for alone time. It's like, when you're in that kind of hermit energy, it's like, yeah, I think, what am I? What I'm an introverted extrovert, or an extroverted introvert. I like being around people, but I like my own time to be able to, gain my energy. And that hermit card is really, really good. It really highlights that idea of coming back, restoring your own lantern, restoring your own light source, and doing it, on your own. So interesting that, we're bringing, this idea of being in a 9 year, being in a hermit year for all of 2025. So keep that in mind too when you're, even if you're doing tarot work for yourself. Remember that hermit energy, kind of gets its fingers into everything. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of nine. A
And when
lot
you
with the
do that
nine.
work for yourself, right? When we find that light within, it just naturally emanates out for everybody else. So it's almost like, we want to change everybody else, we want to change the world, but the only person you can change is you. And when you change you, that has an effect on other people. So
Wow.
shining your inner hermit lantern for everybody else.
Bonnie internalizes the wisdom of the hermit and shares it with the world. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Shall we
No
shall we look
problem.
at the nines themselves, or should we stick to the hermit?
We could keep talking about the hermit. Maybe that's our next episode.
The next episode, exactly. Yeah,
Peter,
we'll
we're
do.
going to
Yeah.
talk about the year of the hermit.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, Nine of Wands. Do
Nine
you
of
want to
Wands.
start? Do you want me to start? What do you want to do?
Go ahead. Go ahead. You start. You go ahead.
I kind of like the Nine of Wands. It's a difficult card, but when I see the Nine of Wands, it reminds me to persevere. So the Nine of Wands is like in most iterations of this card, when you see it, along this Rider-Waite-Smith path, it's usually somebody, they've got a bandage on their head, or they look beat up, they look really tired, they're holding onto a wand, almost like they can't move forward. So really, it's kind of like you've been on this journey now, right? And it's been a tough journey, right? And we think about Wands energy, fire energy is a lot.
Yeah.
um, so you get to this point and you're like, oh, like I don't even know if I can just keep going. Like I just want to give up. And I think me and you see this a little bit differently, but when I see the Nine of Wands, I'm reminded like, Bonnie, you're almost there. Persevere, keep going, don't give up. Like it's almost like when you want to manifest something and you're doing all this work and then you're like, ah, it's not working, forget it. And you're right there. If you had just kept going, you would sort of see that thing that you're trying to manifest come into reality. So even though it's hard, it's like getting that will and determination just to keep going a little bit more, because it's not going to be long before you're going to see sort of what it is that you've been working on. So that's what I see with the Nine of Wands, to sort of keep going and persevere. You're almost there.
Yeah, I don't think I see it that differently. I think I do see it because I kind of look at that nine as being that, that max energy. I really do see this as that max fire, that idea that, I've had a long pathway, a long and hard fought battle, and I'm still here.
Mhm.
I'm still standing. I've learned lessons. I've learned the lesson of hurt, because you can certainly see that this person is nursing some wounds.
Mhm.
They're also, if you look and see where they've got their hand, they're in the Rider-Waite-Smith anyways, they're also protecting their heart. So in some ways, they're like, you know what? I've gone through a challenging narrative, challenging pathway, whatever it happens to be. And I'm still here, but
Mhm.
I've learned lessons from the path that I've come on. I also think that it can be, like if you look at the card, and like I'm always thinking Rider-Waite-Smith, they also look like they are hanging on for dear life. So sometimes I also think that this is a card that shows up when we have a hard time letting go. So I think, sometimes it's an invitation to take the wand that you're holding on to and put it with the other eight wands. Like if we think of the message of the Eight of Wands, the message is movement, right? So if we took the message of the eight wands that the person's not hanging on to, and we said, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're hanging on to this battle. You're still kind of living in the look. This was a big fight. Um, but you're still in that space. Sometimes that Nine of Wands says, yeah, okay, you're done. Now it's time. Now it's actually time to move on, to start a new pathway, to start another journey, to put your fire somewhere else. So
Mhm.
I don't know. That makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100% it makes sense.
there you go. And
For
then,
sure. Do you want to share a practical way that you
so,
could use this?
yes. So I kind of hinted at the phrase. So for me, I'm going to be simple with this one. I'm not going to be simple with all of them, but I always think that this card is a great reflective card. You had used actually the language of nines as one of reflection, and I think that this one, maybe more than any of the other cards in any other suit, is a card of reflection simply because it 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 really does highlight I'll say the end of a journey, right? It looks like they have done something difficult. They've completed something difficult. So what I would do, I would take Elton John's song "I'm Still Standing," I would play it in the background, and I would reflect, or I would journal, or I'd focus on some kind of an affirmation. I'd even use the title of that song as an affirmation with that card, saying "I'm still standing," and I might repeat it as several times. I remember my dad talking about it. I think I've mentioned this before, having affirmations that he would tell himself in the morning in the mirror, before he started his day. This is a great card that helps kind of manifest that "I'm still standing" energy. Yeah, that was hard, but I've learned lessons from it. I've whatever I've done, but I have completed that journey and I'm still here. So that would be my suggestion. Would just be using that card as a backdrop. Of course, you're not going to. I'm not going to shy away from a musical reference. Get a song. I'd be, "I'm Still Standing," I think is a great anthem for that as well. That,
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking, and I know that Elton John actually wrote that song, I believe, after a long battle with drug and alcohol addiction as well, along with other addictive behaviors. And I think that song is a reflection of him saying, "Look, I should be dead, but I am not. I'm still standing." So what a better anthem, to be able to highlight that energy. And then, I'm not going to say journal, but even pause, reflect, doing whatever you want with that. How about you? What have you got with the
Yeah,
nine
well,
of wands?
before we get into that, I just want to say I love that perspective of how to look at that card, because I do see that card as like perseverance and having that determination and that courage to keep going, but also celebrating that you are still
Yeah.
standing. Like holy, you're still
I
here.
like how you
Celebrate
self-censored
that.
that.
I did, right? I almost went for it, but I didn't. um And there's power in recognizing how resilient you are and what you have gone through. So thank you
Mhm.
for bringing that perspective into it. I
No,
I really love that.
you're welcome. If
Um,
these cards are nothing but, I mean, these are power, right? These are cards of almost pure power. So
yeah.
yeah.
So what I would use this, well, a practical way how I would use this card is if you do need to persevere through something. So I would I would say, like, if you're doing like an exercise practice, right? And this is, again, it's like that mind over matter thing. It's like you're doing push-ups. Your mind is going, you can't do anymore. Like, this is the last one. And if you're just like, no, I can do one more, that's when the magic happens, is when you do that last one. So if there's some type of like exercise routine, or something that you're like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I know it's good for me, pull out your nine of wands, bring that with you into the space wherever it is that you're exercising, physical movement, like whatever it is that you're doing, and know that you have the energy. You can do it. Like, you're sort of getting this the energy from that card to help you to keep going, and to show you that you can do
Mhm.
it. So that's my practical way of using the card.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because it is a card of, it is a card that embodies that energy in workout
Yeah,
program.
just
That's
one
great.
more,
Right?
one
Totally.
more push up,
Yeah.
one more sit up, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. One more kilometer, yeah, 5 more minutes. Yeah, for sure.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, nine of cups. You want to tackle this one?
Yeah, look, it's funny because I always think the Nine of Cups, especially when we think about maybe not the traditional meanings, but like the Nine of Cups and the Nine of Pentacles kind of have a little bit of a similar vibe to them. When we think about, the idea of satisfaction in this card, the idea that, all the things of our heart's desire are around us, that, I sit in my heart's content, that it's a card of emotional satisfaction. It's a card of emotional fulfillment, a card of, heart's abundance. I still though, and I can't help but looking at Pamela Coleman Smith's rendition of this guy, and there's a bit of smarminess to him. He's got a little bit of, "Eh, look at this. Look at what I've got here." Like, gluttony's not the right word, but he's a bit of a smart ass. Like he's kind of come to the things that he has that he cherishes. And I do think that there is a bit of show offness to this particular card. So I guess it's where I differentiate this card from the Nine of Pentacles, because otherwise, if we talked about the idea of abundance and fulfillment, all we would really be doing is we'd be switching, well, abundance of the heart versus abundance of the routine of gratitude that would sit with the Nine of Pentacles. So I like to differentiate between the two with that idea of, this he's got a little bit of that smirk on him. So, that's I sometimes do see, that card. The other thing I was just thinking of as well with this card is I know it's Rachel Pollack. Rachel Pollack talks about the Eight of Cups and says, if in the Eight of Cups we've lost something, in the Nine of Cups we've found it. And I'm like, that's an interesting way to look at it, because if you think of the Eight of Cups, we have a person who's basically abandoned their cups and going down a pathway to look for something else. They don't have long to look, though, because in the next card in the Nine of Cups, they found what it is that they're looking for. And in a lot of ways, it was the right choice to walk away because they found that emotional connection and abundance in the Nine of Cups. So, again, I talk about the idea of satisfaction, abundance, fulfillment in this card, but I'm adding that smirk, so I'm adding a little bit of smarmy to the card. That's where I come from with the Nine of Cups. What about you, Bonnie?
Yeah, I will be honest. I'm not a huge fan of the Nine of Cups in the Rider-Waite deck. It doesn't convey to me the energy of that card, because you're right. It just kind of, I don't know. I don't see that card and then see that emotional attachment, not attachment, but that emotional satisfaction.
Right.
So I agree with everything you said. I do believe, we're in the energy of water with cups. It's those things that are really near and dear to our heart. It's contentment. I also look at the Nine of Cups as like your wish is coming true. So quite often this is like a yes card. This is whatever it is that you're wishing for is coming to you. But I look at that from the lens of like from the heart, like what is it that your heart really wants? That's what's coming to you. So not so much like material abundance or any, it could be material abundance if that's what your, heart's desire is, but it's really an emotional connection to like contentment and satisfaction and like emotional fulfillment, like just feeling really good in this card. So I do see it as a very positive card. I also look at it as, what is it that you want in your, like, sometimes we don't know what we want, and I'll talk a little bit about this as how I would use this card for my practice, but I kind of look at this card very similar to the Star card, because it's like you're putting your wish out there and then allowing that wish to be able to come to you. But what we focus on has a huge impact on what actually becomes real in our life. So the brain doesn't know what you're wishing for, really. It just knows what you're thinking about all the time. So it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for, because it's like, if you're constantly focused on the lack of having that thing that you want, you're just going to get more of the lack. You have to imagine what it would be like to actually have that thing and focus on sort of that end goal, as opposed to how you feel because you don't have it. So it kind of has that, when that comes up for me, I always bring that into it. It's like really giving you an opportunity to think about, what do you want and how do you feel about that? And where is it? Like, are you thinking about the lack of having it or actually having it? Because that will draw it to you. Like either way, it'll draw it to you, whether it's lack or whether it's abundance of actually having it. So.
Yeah, we don't see the card that differently. I agree with you. I think that the depiction in the Rider-Waite Smith doesn't necessarily convey the energy of the card itself, because of that, kind of
it's just
stance,
it's funny.
Yeah, there's a cockiness to it almost. It's like, yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the idea of, because it is a card though of want, isn't it? It isn't necessarily a card of need. It
Mhm.
is a card of desire, and a wish card. Okay, Bonnie, have you got practical examples that we can, use the Nine of Cups for?
Yes. So this is right up my alley. This is like my passion. This is why I love, working with people and coaching people through this. But because I do see it as a card of desire
Mm.
or, wishes fulfilled, this would be a really wonderful opportunity to actually create an intention and then visualize what it would be like to have that intention as if it already exists. So I'm huge on intention setting because when we have a focus for something that we want or how we want to feel, it just makes it so much easier to be able to align our choices and our actions with that desire. So I think, and then sort of having there's some people say I don't know where this came from or where I heard it, but if you're doing a reading for somebody and somebody makes a wish before the reading starts and the Nine of Cups shows up, it means that wish will come true. So I think that there's like this magical energy
Yeah.
behind this card of like,
Yeah.
oh, if I use this card, my wish will come true. So focusing on a desire that you have, creating an intention, something simple, in the present tense, and then really visualizing what it would be like to have that. The more you do that, the more that you can, bring that into your life. And I'm just going to add a little, if you add some meditation to that, it can sort of, help that move along a little quicker, but that's for call
Ah,
me if you want to know how to do.
there you go. Right. There you go.
Yeah.
Breathewithbonnie.com.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's kind of funny because mine would have been very similar. So I'm going to try, because originally I was thinking of an exercise that in some ways sort of blends the Knight of Cups and the Knight of Pentacles energy. Um, because, I think sometimes we wish for things because we think we don't have enough. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes the Nine of Cups is a good reminder that the Knight of Cups is an emotion of happiness and of heart's fulfillment. So I was going to say, oh, it'd be a great card to have, and I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish, and make some I wish statements. But I'm going to kind of go off the cuff here, and I think about, I don't know if people have heard of Rob Bresney or not. Rob Bresney's an astrologer, but also kind of a philosopher. He has a book that I have had for years called Pronoia. And at the very beginning of the book, I don't know what page, but it's pretty early on, he has an essay called Glory in the Highest. And it reads, when you first read it, it kind of reads like a gratitude essay, the things that I'm grateful for. But it's actually, when you think of the title, it's beyond the idea of gratitude. It's the idea of giving us emotional fulfillment. And he lists like all kinds of things, everything from, all of the random things that had to happen to make us who we are, cells dividing and blah, 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 to the fact that most of us living in a developed world can flick a switch and have electricity coming into our house, can turn one tap on and get cold water, the other one and hot water, that we don't have to dig holes to keep our food refrigerated, and so forth and so on and so on. Um, so I always think, if we're thinking of this concept, think about the things that bring us joy and happiness, but to really be intentional. And
Mhm.
it might even be think about 9 things. So, when I think of, I've got fresh butter in the refrigerator, but be explicit and intentional. And it might be, thank you for nourishing me this morning. I put peanut butter on my morning toast. Thank you for giving me the calories and energy I need. I turn on the lights in the morning. Thank you for lighting my way so that I'm not walking in the dark. I turn on hot water. Thank you for providing me with the heat I need to cleanse myself, whatever it happens to be. Some of those simple things that we think about. And I'll mention it again, by the way. I think if you Google it, you'll probably find an example of it. It's Rob Bresney, Brez. I think it's NY. And I know that the essay is called Glory in the Highest. So, it has a religious connotation in it. It's not other than, the fact that he talks about basically, everything that, that was created, that the universe created for us, all of those things. It's a really interesting exercise in thinking of the small things that bring us joy. So, sorry, it's a long-winded way of saying that this card is a great one to pull out when we want to think about those things that bring us joy, and that we don't have to look very far, that we can easily think of 9 things that bring us joy. The fact that I opened my eyes and I was awake this morning because I don't like the alternative, right? That should be a concept that brings us joy. So yeah, that's all. I've said enough of that. I would say, take the 9 of Cups out if you're looking for inspiration of the kind of things that could bring you joy. Again, I'll say it for the 3rd time. Rob Bresney, Glory in the Highest. It's from a book called Paranoia, but I'm pretty sure that the essay itself is floating around somewhere. It might even be on his website. That's what I would look at. That looking at things that bring us joy. This is a great card to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Thank you for that suggestion, Peter. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, 9 of Swords.
Oh, 9 of Swords.
9 of Swords. Everybody loves to see the 9 of Swords in their reading.
Okay.
Do you want me to tackle this one, or do you want to go?
Am I on? Did I? No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I think you did 9 of Cups. We try to alternate it.
I think you're right.
So okay, 9 of Swords. So wow, this card is like the card of nightmares.
Yeah.
The card of worry. The card of anxiety, stress. There is a shred of hope though in this card. Like again, if a 9 of Swords shows up for you, it's reflecting something to you. I don't believe that the message is that something bad is going to happen, or, it's those things that we worry about, those things that cause us stress, those things that make us anxious. And that's all in the mind. So if we think about the swords is the air element. It's how we communicate. It's what we think about, what we talk about. What are those things that you're constantly thinking about? And quite often we create our own stress based on things that we're thinking about from the past, things that we're worried about in the future that haven't even happened yet. So it is a wake-up call to really look at your mindset and where you are. And that's a hard place to be, because when we're constantly going, we're in this vortex of worry and anxiety, so it's hard to come out of that sometimes. So it really helps you to reflect and be like, it doesn't have to be that way. What can you do to change your mindset to get out of this? Because quite often the things that we're worried and stressed about aren't actually happening, but we're creating that in the mind. So really looking at that to see what are some things that I can do to get myself out of this pattern. Because if we keep allowing ourselves to spin in that vortex, we're never going to get out. So it is a difficult card to come up, but it's also a card of like, look at me, because things need to change. You can't keep going the way that you're going, because you're probably not sleeping. You're stressed. Stress leads to, all kinds of other things. So it's definitely kind of like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
What do you think, Peter?
Well, because I'm pretty sure it was the episode that we did with Barbara Moore where I drew this card from her deck, the Good Fortune deck, I think. Because I think it has the window and the owl sitting on the ledge. And I thought that what you talked about, the idea that, having to find a way out, is that window represents that really well. The idea that, look, we could be stuck in this card if we really let it, because just the image alone, like this is a powerful card. We talk about the power of the 9s. Mm-hmm. The image itself is, it may be one of the strongest images of any minor arcana card. Like it's intense. We got, there's usually 9 swords hovering somewhere. But as you pointed out, though, this is a mental card. Like if we talk about the idea of peak power or peak intensity or peak energy of the suit, our brain is giving it everything it's got, right? This is our brain, our mind being at its most powerful. And at this stage, it is not helpful, right? This card represents our nightmares and our fears and our anxiety and the things that keep us up at night. And it's painful, but it's swords. So as you mentioned, right, it is all in our head. So I was at I was at a workshop. I'm the chair of our local library board, and our library hosted a workshop a few weeks ago with a presenter who said something that I've actually shared with someone. I don't think I've shared it here on the podcast, but it has stuck with me. It's that pain is unavoidable. Suffering is optional. So the idea that if we look at this card and think, yup, something is causing us, worry is causing us anxiety, to sit in it and suffer in it is something that we are choosing to do. So as you said, Bonnie, looking for, sort of a way out. Now, I've looked at this card in a bit of a different light as I've kind of gone back to the Rider-Waite-Smith, and I'm reminded of, and I was thinking of guests we have coming on at some particular point in time in the next few weeks. And Susie Chang actually has something called the Nine of Swords Blanket Project. So we're going to have to ask her about this, just, giving people a precursor of the guests we've got coming. And the idea is that all the symbols on the blanket actually represent the idea of love, because you've got the rose and the idea of the protection of the universe or the cosmos, because, and I've mentioned this before in previous episodes, when we see the symbols of the zodiac, it represents all of existence, like it's all of the universe. And that's actually laying on top of the person who's in bed in the Rider-Waite-Smith. They're actually being protected by this blanket. So, when you talk about the idea that there is a way out, that this is it's not a card without hope, I think that blanket, the idea of protection, wrapping us up, comfort is shown in this card as well. If we can just take a look at it from a different perspective, and instead of focusing on the black background and the nine swords, is to actually focus on the blanket that's laying across the person. Because everything else in this card, the image on the bed, I think has two people, and again, I'm thinking of the Rider-Waite-Smith. It has two people fighting. The background is black. It's one of only 5 cards in the entire deck that have a black background. In the Rider-Waite-Smith, there's no window, there's no way out. So that blanket can sometimes represent that. So that's what I'm bringing to the table here with the Nine of Swords.
That's awesome. I'm going to look at that card. Well, I don't really often use that,
right?
But I'm going to pull that out and I'm going to look at the blanket, and that's a great way to look at that too. So thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome. And if I can, because that's going to segue into my practical example with this card.
Okay.
So I would think when we're worried about something, right? When we know we've got something, and we all have those moments of personal narrative where, the hamster wheel is just going and going and going, and we cannot, for the life of us, get out of that train of thought. Go get the card. Instead of focusing on the swords, focus on the blanket. Make yourself a cup of something warm or something comforting and cocoon yourself up with a blanket. Now, I actually think that on Susie Chang's website, she actually sells this blanket. So you don't have to do that, but get a good book, grab a show, a movie, binge something. Get those things that highlight your need for self-care. And this card, instead of focusing on the swords, focus on the blanket, curl yourself up, comfort yourself up, wrap yourself up in a blanket or a cozy or a throw or whatever it happens to be, and do those comfortable things. Remember, 9, right? Concept of solitude. Wrap yourself up in that cocoon, bring yourself that self-care, focusing on the blanket instead of focusing on the swords. That's my suggestion for this card. Oh, what about you?
Peter, I love that. I'm totally going to do that. My kids for Christmas got these, this is the name brand, like an Udi. So it's literally like wearing a blanket. And I was like, I should have got myself one of those because they look so good. But I love that practice. Thank you for sharing that.
If it wasn't for the dollar exchange, American Canadian dollar and the shipping cost, I would probably have ordered the blanket, because I love the idea. And if you go and look on her website, there's actually a picture of her curled up with the blanket, and then she's reading her book, 36 Secrets. So I'm always like, it's just, it really resonated with me. And, as I was kind of doing a little bit of research for this podcast, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is like, what a fantastic way to reframe what is a challenging card. So how about you?
Okay,
Sorry,
so
go ahead. No,
no, I love that. I love the idea of self-care. I actually
yeah.
have a class that I'm working on this weekend. I have some people coming over to do a self-love class, and I might use the energy of the I've never thought of the nine of swords as a card of self-care. I think about that more as the four of swords, but I'm going to look at that differently now and see what I can get from that card. But as an aside, what I would suggest how you could use this card, I would pull this card and then I would pull another card intentionally from the deck that you find really peaceful and that you think would help you to get out of this, mindset that you're in. It could even be the Four of Swords, actually. Those cards would go really nicely together because my practice is meditation. So when we're in constant stress or when the mind is like constantly going and we can't get out of that cycle, we need to interrupt that somehow. And the way that's worked for me, the way that I teach other people is really when we sort of block out all the noise from the outside world, we have the opportunity to go inward. And that's where we can find rest. That's when we can restore. That's when healing can happen. That's when we can get different insights. So if you can, find a meditation that you really like to do, to help you break free from that constant cycle, that will really help you. And of course too, if this card is, you're under a lot of stress or overwhelm and you're feeling burnt out, the way to combat that is to get rest and to help the body heal and to help change the mindset. So I love meditation practices for that. Again, if you need help in that area, call me. I can help you. The other thing I will say with this card, if you are in a place and you are feeling really stressed and overwhelmed and anxious and you need to get help,
Yeah.
this would be a good opportunity for you to seek support, maybe through therapy, talking to somebody, whatever support you need. Like, we can glaze over things and say, we have the ability to change our minds. But if you feel overwhelmed to the point that you need help, I would actually suggest going out and getting support for that, because it's tough to be in that situation if it's too overwhelming for you to try to tackle that on your own.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Nine swords hanging overhead is a lot
It's a
of
lot.
stuff, right? That's pretty heavy.
Yep. Okay, now we move into the Nine of Pentacles. Whew, we're leaving the Nine of we're letting that go, and we're
Yes.
moving to the Nine of Pentacles. What
Okay.
do you think about this card,
Well,
Peter?
it's funny, right? Because I mentioned this when we were talking about the Nine of Cups, is that, I think that idea of abundance and having all the things that we want is so well represented in this Nine of Pentacles. But I also think that this is a card that is about our hard work paying off. We are, we've done that, we planted the seeds, we've embraced our wealth or our routine or investment or our task or whatever it is, whatever realm of pentacles it is, that we started. We are now enjoying the fruits of our labor. So we are sitting in that space of abundance. This card is actually, I think I've referred to this card before as the Little Empress, because it has that Empress kind of energy. It has that fecundity and fertility, around it. As a matter of fact, I think this card is ruled, because this is Scorpio 3, and I think it's ruled by Venus. So it actually has an astrological connection as well. I should probably double check that, but no, I'm almost positive because my birthday kind of
I
sits in
try
an
to
empty
back you up
space.
on that, but Peter,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
out of my
almost
realm.
positive that this is a card that's ruled by Venus. So having that idea of it being the little empress is important. The other thing about this card that I often think is, when we take a look at the facial expression of the Nine of Cups and we get that idea of smarminess, here we get the idea of control. Like, this is somebody, like, they know their stuff, they know they worked hard, and they also recognize that they deserve the fruits of their labor. When I think of the idea of control and that even that idea of self-control, a lot of people talk about, and maybe they don't even notice, the falcon, the hooded falcon that's actually on her hand. So this is a really good symbol of the idea of control and discipline, right? She has this bird that is a bird of prey, and yet it's preying on nothing. It's waiting for her command to be able to take flight. So again, just to kind of recap with this card, it is a card of abundance for sure, but it is a card of recognizing that that abundance is actually a result of choices that we made, of steps that we followed, of things that we did. And if there is a card in there that highlights the idea of gratitude and celebration for our own hard work, it's this one. Oh, what do you think about that? I love this card. Like, I like them all because I think they all have purpose. But this one's not hard. Like, the Nine of Swords, trying to think about ways to be able to work with the Nine of Swords. Nine of Pentacles is not hard. When the Nine of Pentacles shows up, you're pretty happy to see this card. So.
Oh, for sure. Like the smile, right? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Knight of
totally.
Pentacles shows up, there's like a huge smile on your face. You're
Totally.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Peter. I agree. I love the Nine of Pentacles, especially for women when we see the Nine of Pentacles, because generally there's a female in the card. It shows how far you've come. And if we think about the Ace of Pentacles and you were sort of presented with a seed for you to plant and nurture and grow, you're at the 9 now. So you did all of that. You took that opportunity, you nurtured it, you watered it, you picked all the weeds, and now you have this beautiful bounty, around you, this harvest, I guess. So now you can start feeling the benefits of like the reward from all of that work that you've done. And I think as women, I'm sure men experience this too. We never feel like we've achieved something because, we'll hit a milestone and we're like, okay, what next? What next? We're always wanting more and more and more. And sometimes, when this card comes up, it's really an opportunity to be like, wow, you've done a lot. And I'm not saying work hard, right? Like
Yeah.
we kind of have that like, oh my God, you have to work hard to achieve abundance. You have to, enjoy what it is that you're doing and honor what you've done to get you
Yeah.
to this point and celebrate that. And she's alone. So it's almost like you've done this work on
Mhm.
your own. Nobody handed it to you. You didn't have this whole team of people. So I do believe that this is really an opportunity to celebrate what you've created in your life. And it doesn't have to be material abundance. It could just be, those things that you have that are abundance for you. This could be family. This could be your body. It could be the things you have. It could be your home. And I also, again, and this will come out in my practice, my, what to do with this card, but really appreciating what you have. So if this card comes up in a reading and the person looking at it is like, nah, I don't really feel like that person. Again, it's an opportunity to look at what in your life is abundant and to be grateful for that, because I think the suit of Pentacles really is about how we manifest, and the easiest way to manifest anything is to be grateful for what you have and giving gratitude for those things that you're welcoming into your life, even though you may not have them yet. So I love this
Yeah.
card.
Yeah. And thank you for talking about the clearly feminine energy. It gave me a chance as well to correct myself, because I was like, as I was doing them, I think I said this was Scorpio, and I'm like, it's impossible. It can't be Scorpio. It's Pentacles. But I was right. It is a card. It's ruled by Venus, but it's actually, it's not Scorpio 3. It's Virgo. So it's got to be in Earth. But you're right. I mean, I'm hard pressed to think of a deck where the Nine of Pentacles is not portrayed by a female character, by that, that strong sort of female archetype of energy, and that concept of gratitude. I almost used that Rob Bresney poem in this card because I thought it would just as easily apply. Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now
So
you
is that
said
how you would use then? Like you would use that practically?
no, not at all. Oh, is it my turn to talk about practice first?
Sure, if you want to.
So with this one, and this is where I actually chose the deck I'm going to draw a card from today based on the Nine of Pentacles in this particular deck. So in Joanna Powell Colbert's Guy and Tarot deck, Joanna herself is actually the woman in the Nine of Pentacles. Now she calls it the Nine of Earth, and she's sitting or standing in a field of lavender. And I think, what could be
Mm.
more abundant and in some ways more grounding and more, almost more sensual, right? When we think about the idea of being in our bodies, the idea of being surrounded by the smell of lavender, being surrounded by the sight of lavender, I thought about this particular card from the perspective of both grounding, gratitude, and abundance. Now, Kel and I would, when we were living in Europe, and we would travel through France because we lived like 10 minutes from the French border. Every time we would go and look for fields of lavender because they're pretty prominent in France. And as a matter of fact, every year since we've come home, we actually go to a local lavender farm here. We bring a picnic basket. We usually, sneak in a bottle of bubbles. And we go and we enjoy the serenity and the abundance of that particular moment. So this is what I'm going to suggest with this card is this is a great card to actively celebrate abundance. So if you can't get to a lavender field, go and, harvest or buy some lavender somewhere.
Essential oils.
Right. I was just going to say an essential oil, lavender infused soap, whatever you can to try and provide. Look, I think the plant itself is probably relatively easy to find for most people, even if it's dried somewhere, because it does have a real lushness to it. Like the purple color of lavender is just, there's something about it. And look, I'm very particular. I love lavender. Like, anybody knows they want to gift me something, gifting me anything that has the scent of lavender or the taste of lavender.
I didn't know that.
Oh yes, even lavender infused gin. Like totally. Because there's just something. There's something serene, but there's something grounding, and again abundance. For me, there's an abundance there. So I'm sharing that and saying, take this card. You don't have to use the Gaian Tarot because, well, I was going to say I think in February, there's actually a reiteration of this deck, but any 9 of Pentacles, grab a basket and create a picnic inside if you have to, right? Hey, look, and if you've got the 9 of Swords blanket, all the better with all the 9's energy, right? But grab a blanket, go outside if you can, go inside if you can't, lay the blanket out and celebrate things that bring, that are grounding for you, or that put you in that space of abundance. That would be my suggestion, would be to actively go and do something to celebrate. Like I can't, and you live nearby. The lavender fields. There's actually 2 I'm thinking of that are nearby. So we would go. One of them has a cabana, and we honestly we go and we park ourselves in the cabana. We book out our whatever time ticket is, and we bring our stuff and then we walk around in the fields. Like it is, it really is as a practice. The power, and here's that word again in the 9s. The power of that practice is it's palpable. So my suggestion for something practical is try and recreate a moment like that one. A picnic is often a spot where, we tend to relax, we tend to ground ourselves because we're literally sitting on the ground. That would be my long-winded, they all seem to be long-winded today, my long-winded suggestion on how to use the 9 of Pentacles. And I'm going to see, because I'm using this deck, I'm going to see. No, I'm not going to go through it. But anyways, Google 9 of Earth Gaian Tarot, and you'll see what I mean. Like, Joanna's standing there in a field of lavender. So that 9 of Pentacles sense of abundance is really strong in that card. So there you go.
That's great.
I'm done now.
You're done.
Picnic.
I was just going to say
with lavender.
The other thing, because if we think about Pentacles is the earth element,
Yep.
and the earth element is really about nurturing, in receiving. It's that receptive energy. And lavender is such a beautiful scent and oil that we can use to really nurture ourselves. You could also use that with your 9 of Swords if you're sort of helping to calm the mind, because lavender is extremely calming.
Oh, yeah.
It's extremely nourishing. So taking that earth energy and really absorbing that. I love that. And I love the idea of a picnic. Your practice is way better than mine.
I'd be curious to know because there is an herb crafters or herb crafters tarot,
I
and
have it.
I'd be because I believe it's Joanna's deck as well. I'd be
Yeah.
curious to see whether or not the Nine of Pentacles is lavender. I don't have the deck. I've never seen it, but
I'll see. When you're shuffling, I'm going to go
okay.
check it out and see if I can find it
If you could,
quickly.
okay. Well, that would have to be pretty quick. So
It'd have to be quick. Yeah. How
okay.
I would use the
Yeah.
Nine of Pentacles, similar to you, but I love how yours is so specific. I would say to you, because generally in the card, there's wine and there's,
Yeah.
food and it's like bounty. And it is this idea of celebration. So pull out your Nine of Pentacles and plan something that is like extravagant and makes you, we so often don't give ourselves the opportunity to enjoy things that are a little bit extravagant. So if you have that expensive bottle of wine or champagne, we save that for these opportunities and we don't give ourselves permission to use them. So take out your Nine of Pentacles, plan something, have a little indulgence in there and celebrate where you are right now. So that's mine. But have a picnic, throw a bottle of wine in there. I think that's awesome.
Right there you go. Blend the
Some
two, right?
cheese.
Planet extravagant.
Yeah,
Picnic.
do like a little French picnic basket, a
Oh,
French inspired picnic basket.
exactly right. Get nice red wine. Get some beautiful cheese, a nice Didis de Bourgogne. Oh, now we're talking. Okay,
Now we're talking. Now we have to end this
we
podcast so
have
we
to
can go eat cheese
end the
and drink.
podcast. Go and eat out of a picnic basket.
Yeah. Okay, Peter. So do we want to pull a card?
Yes.
I'm going to go look. You're going to shuffle. I'm going to quickly grab
Okay.
my deck and see if there is
okay.
lavender in that Nine of Pentacles.
All right. I'm gonna shuffle, and yeah, if for those of you who are like, there is a beautiful. I'll show the back of the deck for those of you who are able to see, but you can definitely see that already purple that purple color, and the back of the deck here is just beautiful. This now it takes me a while to shuffle. Again, I'll kind of show, like, in comparison to my hands, this is actually a pretty big deck. It's the biggest deck that I've got. But anyways, I'm gonna shuffle it, and you know what? I'll give it a good mix, and that will give Bonnie the opportunity to see if the nine of I don't know if what the suits are in there. If it would be Nine of Pentacles, it'd be Nine of Earth. If it's nine of something else, if it's the
There's
nine
no
of
lavender.
there's no lavender. All right. Well, there you go.
There's apples.
Apples. Well, thought I'd give it a shot. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You want me to start then, since I've got my
Sure.
deck going? Okay. Let me see. Okay. That feels like a good spot to stop. There we go. Not a nine. Look, if I had drawn the Nine of Earth, I'd have that would have been really, really interesting. So, but what I did draw is the Seven of Water. So in this particular case, Seven of Cups. So I always think, this is a card of a lot of options. And we've talked about this before, right? We've got a lot of cups kind of sitting in front of us, and they're pulling at us emotionally, right? So this is water, right? So these are choices that are all kind of drawing us in from the heart. So it often signals a hard decision that we have to narrow down that's in front of us. And it's hard because we care for all of these things. So when I think about this card, I think, if and I'll hold this one up again. In this card here, there are 6 cups that this person didn't choose. So the first thing at times is the remedy for these choices is to establish our boundaries and recognize the power of boundary and the power of limitation. That when we have all these things kind of drawing at us, it's okay to say no, even when it's something that's kind of pulling at our heartstrings, because 7 things is a lot of things. So narrowing them down to 1 or 2 things is kind of what this card says. The second thing it says is, once you've made that choice, make it all out, right? This guy, right? He's leaving nothing in the cup. He's saying, okay, I've made my choice, and now I'm going big or I'm going home, right? Like the idea that we can limit our choices, and then once we do make that seven of cups, that seven of waters choice, then to kind of go at it. The other thing, and this is where I'm thinking of the Rider-Waite-Smith card, is it has a card where, I think it's the seven vices, or, sometimes you talk about our daydreams or our fantasies. It can be a card that does one of two things. It either says, oh, we have the tendency to perhaps get lost in our daydreams or in our fantasies, depending on the context. But it might also remind us that it's actually okay to get lost in dreams and desires and fantasies, because sometimes these things are a stepping stone to making things real. That when we first, a dream is an action that has yet to happen sometimes. So it's recognizing both of those things. Sometimes the seven of cups, and often it's the context of other cards or the context of the question that you asked. Sometimes the seven of cups is saying, hey, pull yourself out of that little, that fantasy world that you've got. Or it might be saying, you know what, actually take that fantasy a little bit further and see whether or not there's elements of reality that sit in there. So that's what I've got for the seven of water. And then for those of you watching, once again, I can't talk more highly about this deck. This is easily my favorite non-Rider-Waite-Smith based deck, because it has the elements as opposed to the suits and whatnot. But I mean, look at the blues in there too, right? You really do get a beautiful sense of that cups energy. And just like the This Might Hurt deck, it has seven different cups, right? It's almost like seven different chalices, which in some ways representing the multitude of options that we have in front of us. So what about you? Anything to add, to look at differently with the seven of cups? What happens when that card shows up?
Yeah, no, I love that explanation. It actually, when it came up, I was like, oh, so each month I create an intention based on a card reading. And I was a little late this month for January because I was pretty sick. But instead of pulling three cards, I just pulled one card, because generally I create it with three. And it was the seven of cups. So
okay.
My intention for January for the community was I focus on what truly matters to me. So with the seven of cups, again, you have a lot of choices in front of you. And I think we get overwhelmed by thinking we're going to pick the wrong thing. So the seven of cups can be a card, like an overwhelming card, because it's like, well, I don't want to choose the wrong thing. And if I choose this, what's that path going to look like? We always want to see what's going to happen when we make a choice, but that's not reality. So with the seven of cups, I really encourage people to choose from your heart, because it is in that element of cups, really it's that emotional heart-based energy, and really trusting your intuition to make that choice. And a lot of times, we take the easy route, we take the most comfortable route, but sometimes that's not the route that's going to help us grow and expand. So it's knowing, when to do that, like maybe coming out of your comfort zone, but also if you don't make choices for things that you really want in life, it's that permission slip to say, it's okay to follow your dreams. It's okay to do the things that you want to do that bring you joy. So it's really being able to discern how to make that decision, and where why it is that you're making that decision. And I'll tell people all the time, use your intuition, follow that feeling that feels good for you, even though it might be scary. That could be the route that you need to take to grow and expand and maybe experience something. And following someone's dreams might not be comfortable, but that's part of life.
I forgot that was your intention card, because I obviously get your mailings. And as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, yes, that's right. That's right. It was the seven of cups.
Yeah. So when that card comes up for me, I'm like, oh, damn, I need to make a decision.
Yeah.
So,
but sometimes, and to kind of link the two ideas is when you make the decision, then go all in with the decision, right? It's recognizing that, okay, this is the decision that I've made. And it's okay to let other things go, and then to say, this is the path that I'm going to follow, and to forget about, okay, well, what would have happened if I had made one of the other choices, and kind of embrace the experience that's sitting in front of you and the choice you made, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm using Tarot of the Abyss by Anna
Ah,
Turian.
I almost used that one today too. Funny enough.
Turin or Tur it's terrible. I should remember. I have
Oh, I've got it. I've got it here. I
got
mean,
it.
not that I can pronounce it any better, but mine is
Turian.
yeah.
So I apologize if I mispronounced that. Okay. So I pulled the Page of Wands.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I love this deck. It's a black and white deck. It's illustrate like she drew the images on the card. So in this card, it has sort of a young female holding some sticks, and she's walking towards a fire. So I love that. The Page of Wands, I love. It's that fiery energy. It's that bravery to go after, do those things that you want to do with curiosity and enthusiasm. And again, it's a page, so it's something new, something you're curious about, and just going after it without analyzing everything to death. Right? It's that spontaneous energy of like, oh, that looks like fun. I'm going to try and do that thing, which I need a lot of that in my life. I think I've mentioned before that I tend to overcomplicate things. I overanalyze, and and to try to bring joy back into everything. I mean, we're doing what we love to do, and sometimes that can feel like really heavy, and again, feeling like it has to be so overcomplicated. But I love the energy of the pages, bringing that fun, youthful vibe, frequency into whatever it is that you're doing. So if there's something that you're wanting to do, go for it, like with enthusiasm and curiosity and bravery. Like this page isn't afraid to do things. So I I can harness the energy of that today. How about you, Peter? What
Yeah.
would you say about the Page of Wands?
It was the one word that I was thinking of was courage, right? Was the idea of that Page of Wands energy as being courageous energy. So all
Mhm.
the things you said about, taking that chance, exploring things with curiosity, but doing it from a place of courage. And the reason I'd add the word courage is because there are times when and I'm thinking of again, because I've got Joanna's deck here, I'm thinking of I think the Page of Wands in this deck is called the Child of Fire. And it's a young, because I always think that childlike innocence, that childlike curiosity, the wonder and awe that a child looks at the world through is a
Mhm.
great way to view the page. But they're sitting there with their hands, at a fire, feeling the heat and sort of asking what, every 2 and 3 and 4 year old who's walking around a kitchen thinks is, how close do I get to the fire until I get burnt? Right. So it's recognizing as well that sometimes when we make those courageous choices, that the outcome isn't always the outcome that we wanted. We could get hurt, we can get burned, but sometimes the lesson is in that outcome that, and I was talking about the idea of, pain is unavoidable, suffering is a choice. There's another expression I remember it thinking about it when my kids were young, is that there are times when pain can be a great teacher, where sometimes by wrapping up, people and not allowing children to make choices, or to create people who are, to create people, to have people go down a pathway that is risk averse, as opposed to sometimes taking a risk, recognizing that that risk might cause discomfort, and then learning from the discomfort. That Page of Wands really does sit in that space to say, you know what, I'm game to try anything. I'm game to try anything, and whatever the outcome, I will learn from that. If it's a favorable outcome, then great. And if it's an unfavorable outcome, I have the choice to kind of redirect my path as well. So that's the only thing that I would add, with that Page of Wands, which is that courage and the idea to sort of play with Page's play with fire, which is that energy of of the wands. So that's where
Interesting that you pulled the Seven of Cups and I pulled the Page of Wands. If you brought those two energies together, kind of like you're trying to make a choice and then the
Mhm.
Page of Wands shows up and it's like, huh, what's that thing that you want to do that's
Right,
really exciting for
right.
you? And that you need a little bit of courage and a little bit of fire behind that to take that choice. So if you wanted to read those cards together, it could be kind of
Interesting
like, I'm gonna look at this from the Page of Wands
perspective.
perspective. What
Yeah.
would I choose if I
Mm.
were the Page of Wands, trying to make a decision with all of these cups in front of me?
Interesting. That's an interesting blending of the two.
Hmm.
All right. So
Okay.
What have you got going on, Bonnie?
What have I? Okay. I have an exciting new series that I'm starting. So the first one is on February the 12th. It's online and it's part of a series called Meet the Mate. It's the Soul's Journey Meet the Majors. So every month I'll be focusing on a different major arcana, starting with the Fool. And I think that's great because the Fool heralds, new beginnings and taking that leap of faith. So really working with the energy of the Fool to help you start something new. So we're going to talk about what the Fool means, what the energy is, do some journaling around that. And then I'm actually going to guide you through a meditation to meet the Fool. So that is starting on February the 12th. And then every month I'll have a different theme. And I'll go in sequence through the major arcana. So if you want to check that out, you can check it out on my website, breathewithbonnie.com. You could follow me on Instagram at Breathe with Bonnie, but I have way more stuff on my website. So-
What a great idea. Like I love the idea of going deep into each major because there's so much richness there. There's opportunities for intention, there's opportunities for meditation, there's opportunities for discussion, exploring symbolism. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to
Thank
sign
you.
up then. I'm gonna have to sign up.
I'll send you a link, Peter.
Okay, please do. Thank you. Thank you.
What do you have going on?
That's what I need is
where
one
can we
more. I
find
need one
you?
more course to take. I need one more course to take. That's
I
what I
know,
need.
right?
I'm actually I'm alluding to a course. I've actually started taking my wine tasting course through a college. So I've got one night a week. I'm learning all about wines of the world. So that's not the thing I have going on, though. That's something I've got going on in my personal life. The one thing I'd like to highlight, actually, I'm not sure if I've talked about it before, but I actually offer one-on-one mentoring services, and I often think, for people who are looking to get some support, some one-on-one support in their individual studies of the tarot, this is actually, I call it my most cost-effective service. It's also one of my favorite services because what I do is I create a safe one-on-one space. Students bring their questions, they bring their curiosities about the tarot, and for an hour we discuss and we explore different perspectives on whatever questions people bring. You find this underneath my tarot consults on my website, peterwhitetarot.com, and then you click on the link. It says, 60-minute mentoring service. So, that's the one thing that I would highlight. I love working with students of all levels in the tarot. For the other things that I'm offering, best place to find out is either through my website at peterwhitetarot.com or on either Instagram or Facebook, both at Peter White Tarot. So that's, other than my wine tasting course, and those are the things that I've got going on. So
Yeah. Well, hey, you can use your Nine of Pentacles and bring that along with you on your wine tasting course
yeah.
and be like, which, which wine should I buy
Right?
next?
That's
So,
right. Or the Seven of Cups go, oh my goodness, so many choices,
ah,
4 wines in front of us. Which one am I going to pick? I
exactly.
know. I know.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, we want to thank everybody for being here today and hanging out with us at the Tarot or at Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We also invite you to like and subscribe and leave a comment, a kind comment, please. The more you do that, the more it helps us get the word of tarot out into the world. As you know, Peter and I love this practice so much, and we want to share with as many people as we can who may be curious or wanting to start their journey or who already love tarot as much as we do. So we would really appreciate that. Also, if you have any ideas or questions for upcoming episodes, we would love to hear from you. You can put that in the comments. You can send us an email. Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear from you, and we will definitely work on something like that for you. And with that, we say goodbye, and we'll see you next week on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter.